Well, what's up, Living Heads? Welcome to another episode of From the Yellow Chair. I'm Crystal, and today I have someone that people are probably, if you're watching, you're like, man, y'all look alike. But today we're going to be talking with the general manager of Spot On Pest Control, one of the best brands we think that we have ever rebranded, especially for the pest control industry. So it's been a really exciting time of watching them really conceptualize a brand, build a brand, and already continue to grow. Just happens to be my family, and it has been such a pleasure to be a part of it. You're going to want to grab a lemonade, have a seat, and listen to us as we talk about the journey of rebranding a pest control company. Let's sip some lemonade. All right, everybody. Well, welcome to our episode of From the Yellow Chair, where we are going to talk to Tiffany Nash, which happens to be my sister. I'm the older sister, but she happens to be my sister, and she and her husband run Spot On Pest Control here in East Texas. But the reason that we're talking to them today on this show is because Tiffany went through the branding process of working with Lemon Seed Marketing, and she also had experience working at Lemon Seed Marketing. She worked with us for a while. So, Tiffany, why should anyone of our listeners care what you have to say?
Well, I'm your typical middle sister. A lot of people don't even know I exist. And so I am Crystal's. Crystal and I are only 18 months apart. And of course, then there's Trey. And so, so I'm excited to kind of share with y'all what Crystal and Trey and I came up with in the Lemon Seed team and just kind of share all the cool stuff that we're doing right now.
Yeah. So, okay. So we'll kind of set the stage. So many of our listeners know that our family started a heating and air conditioning company when my grandfather retired from the Navy in 1974. Then my dad worked there. Then I worked there. We've all worked at the air conditioning company in some form or fashion for a long time. Well, then I branched off and started with Lemon Seed. Then Tiffany was a school teacher, right? Tiffany, how long were you a teacher?
So I taught 10 years in the public school system, and then spent about 5 years at a public school. So the year
At
COVID,
a private school.
yeah,
5 years at a private school.
yeah, and so what did I say?
Public school. It's okay.
Yeah. So 4 years in private school. So the year COVID hit, my husband and I were also moving a couple of hours away to the San Antonio area, and so I decided not to go back to work that year. Crystal had just launched Lemon Seed. Maybe it had been probably 8 or 9 months since she had launched Lemon Seed, and so I kind of came on board and just started just sitting literally hour after hour on meetings as she met with contractors. And so I grew up, of course, with my dad running Mac Williams and then my brother. And I knew like the day in, kind of day out, dealing with the employees and stuff. But I never really knew like the marketing side and the risk taking side that came with owning your own business. And so as I sat in all these meetings with Crystal, literally 5 to 6 hours a day, like I fell in love with like the industry as a whole. And then she was allowing me to travel some, and so I was exposed to like how the industry was also like a family. And so that's kind of how I came about with learning more in detail the service side of things.
Yeah. So then our brother comes to us and says, okay, we want to start a pest control company. And he thought this was a good plan to give Tiffany and her husband, Chris, some freedoms, right? So we all trade in entrepreneurial things. Like we always think we're going to give ourselves more time. Instead, we buy ourselves some hustle. So Tiffany and Chris started running a pest control company. But the first thing we had to do was an acquisition. So there was a young guy, Mr. Greer, that was here in our town. So this pest control company is here in rural East Texas. So very much the same market that the main office of McWilliams is in. So McWilliams Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing. So we really knew the market well. So started putting out some feelers. And Tiffany's time at that private school let her meet a wonderful teacher that worked there. And her husband happened to be running a pest control company that was wildly successful. He was pretty much a one-man show. Right, Tiffany, what all was going on with Bill?
Yeah, so he had worked for what we would consider a pretty large company in the Davao Lufkin area for about 10 years. And so he took, when that owner left, he took his residential customers and the other guy took the commercial customers. And so he had been, Mr. Greer had been operating on his own with that residential group customers for about 10 years. And so was doing pretty good, with his revenue.
Yeah, so doing well, but was ready to transition. The funniest thing when Tiffany and Trey met with him, he's like, I just don't really have the want to like go build this thing huge. Like, I know there's a lot of work to it. I know I like the simplicity of running my routes. And so, we were like, well, we do have the energy and we are excited to take it. Would you consider, showing us the ropes? And so, made that acquisition for Mr. Greer, and that's been a good transition. Just like any owner to go working with someone else, you always run into those bumps of, okay, I was in charge and now I'm not as much in charge. And so, but Bill's been a good player of trying to like hang in there with the changes. Cause we naturally have hustle culture. And so, the day that we signed the papers was the day that Trey was like, why do we not have more leads? Tiffany, like, we need more leads. And so, in true Trey McWilliams fashion, he was already, cracking the whip of us trying to get us there, trying to get us motivated there. So the first thing we had to do was take Lone Star Pest and Termite, which was Mr. Greer's company name. And Tiffany and I were tasked with creating a new name.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say, like, it was a very simple logo. He had just a one-page website. Didn't really do any kind of social media. There were no, Google ads, no Google reviews. We didn't have any of that to work with. His truck, he was just with a regular truck that was just solid black, and he had just, some vinyl stickers on there, just following what the state regulations. So we didn't have a lot working for us with regarding his brand or his logo.
Yeah, and that is a good point. So, and a lot of contractors, if you're listening, you might be in this boat of you have a logo and it was fine, it was decent, but he had never really had, to be honest, he never really had to push really hard. He kept himself busy just from word of mouth and referrals. So remember, when we branded, we were branding so that we could scale. Honestly, there was not, if we just wanted to maintain where we were, nice and easy, word of mouth mentality, we would have just stuck to Lone Star Pest and Termite. But we knew to really grow and scale the business, we really needed to jump into something much, much deeper and much more branded with a much deeper marketing strategy. So I know Tiffany and I were talking, we were just throwing around all kinds of things. I can't remember that one name that we had that was the strong man. And it was a man lifting weights. And Emily, so my partner at MNC, she had designed that one because Spot On kind of popped up pretty easy. Do you remember how that came to be?
Yeah. So you and I, we were at the other lemon seed office, and we were thinking about moving. I think we were getting ready to create that downstairs area for the podcast.
Yeah.
And Dad met with us that day, our dad, and we knew we were marketing to women the most part when it came to the branding and the logo. And so we were just like throwing out the ideas. And I don't know if you remember, Crystal, but you were like set on a huge cockroach.
Yes, I wanted a roach on top of a vehicle.
Yeah.
I just thought that would be so disruptive, but no one wants to drive the roach mobile.
No. And so as we were brainstorming, my dad was like, what about a ladybug? Well, after, 15 years of teaching kindergarten and just my personality, I was like, that is very much who I am. And so I was like, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Like, and I think that gets people's attention. And so that's kind of how, so that's basically, we knew we kind of wanted this ladybug mascot. So I just started brainstorming names that would go with this ladybug. And we came up with Spot On Pest Control.
Yeah. So, and it was interesting because it also kind of leans into this story. So, we're a very close family in the traditional sense. I mean, we all live within 10 miles of each other. So there's my mom and dad, thankfully, both still alive and well. And then I'm the oldest. I'm married with 2 boys. Tiffany's married with 2 kids. And my Trey, of course, is married with 3 kids. We all live really close. And so, we're all a close knit family. Well, my mom's parents were just good, wholesome people. Worked at a timber plant here. My grandmother was a stay-at-home mom, if you will, and at the air conditioning company for McWilliams, the whole one of the biggest nonprofit focuses that McWilliams takes on is Alzheimer's awareness. We lost my grandmother in 2010 from Alzheimer's awareness, or from Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's. My East Texas shows. Okay, but we lost her in 2010 from that. And my grandfather and my mom, and technically Tiffany here, had been a big caretaker of her when she was going through her journey with that. And then my grandfather, unfortunately, 4 years after my grandmother died, 4 years, Tiffany?
3, but yeah.
3 years, actually committed suicide. And we think just from sadness, really. And so that was, of course, very terrible time for our family, especially for our mom. And so we knew we wanted to do something about that. Tiffany was really passionate about not so much suicide awareness. This sounds weird when we talk about this, but this is why brands have to be authentic. Okay. But more about life after someone in your family commits suicide, and what that looks like. What does your mental health need to go past that, in a sense of how do you learn to come to terms with what happened and move on and find joy in life again? And so Johnny is my grandfather's name. It's mine and Tiffany's grandfather's name. And so ironically, Johnny on the spot made sense. So that is how the ladybug got his name. Tiffany, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of like unique things. People automatically assume a ladybug is a girl, but we all know there has to be girl and boy ladybugs, and so that automatically puts like a twist on it. But I think people make the connection. So on the Spot On YouTube channel, I've done a recording of kind of how we came to the name of Johnny on the Spot, kind of a little longer version of what Crystal just explained. And I think people make the connection. So yeah, really my vision for Johnny is that he brings joy and excitement and a carefree spirit to people. Not only, with the suicide with my grandpa, my own kids were born with a genetic disorder. So I've had to deal, like, as we've navigated through childhood and teen years, like with mental health stuff that like a lot of like Crystal and I, Trey, didn't deal with growing up. And so it made me a little more passionate about it, and that there's so many people out there that just need someone to make them smile, excited. And so that's what I want Johnny to bring to the community. Just with my teaching background, my husband's DPS, and he was also a police officer in our local community for 10 plus years. The community is super important to us. And every time Johnny is out in the public, I mean, we get so many people, messaging us and taking pictures with him and sending, posting it on Facebook and Instagram. And I think he's truly accomplishing what we set out, and that was to bring joy and excitement to not only kids, but to adults.
Yes. I mean, and, Dad was right. Our dad was right about this. Like, Johnny has been a big hit with everyone, and more too. It's more about just what he brings. We live in a world right now where everything is, I feel like, harsh, right? So everything is hustle, and you're busy, and all this competition is cutthroat. So when people are able to, they just let their guard down a little differently when there is this gigantic man ladybug at our event. So Tiffany and
dance. It's usually my husband. So he, Johnny's known because Johnny's got moves.
Yeah, Johnny out there breaking it down. So, but Tiffany and Chris, the Spot On Pest Control, just moved into a new office. Literally 4 days later, we had a ribbon cutting with the Chamber of Commerce, because if you know us, I'm all about let's hit the ground with all this community marketing. So we created Johnny. And so Johnny and the Spot On Pest Control. And so Lemon Seed created, specifically Emily. We got the pleasure of working directly with Emily on this. And of course, Emily is a beautiful designer with great imagination. And so now listen, when you go visit spotonpestcontrol.com, and you see that we are literally bright yellow and red with this big ladybug. There's spots all over the truck. It is definitely recognizable everywhere we go. People already comment on the brand. We knew the importance of things being so disruptive. And so
And actually, last month, our second biggest leads for new acquisition was the trucks being seen on the road.
So right now, as Spot On's in its infancy, we've just onboarded with Field Routes, which is, you know, the Service Titan equivalent in the pest control world, where we can just now start really tracking leads better. Tiffany and I had launched a call rel account because, listen, I know we knew how to start things. So, so one good thing, I'm going to talk about the brand, finish up with this brand story, and then I'm going to move into the marketing piece. But here's what I want to say about what Tiffany did and Trey did that were really good. Once we decided on Spot On being the name and we went and bought the URLs, we got Johnny built out. There was no going back. We didn't go back and question every color, question every van wrap. We trusted the process, and it really just allowed us so much freedom to put something to work. So, and I knew that Tiffany and Chris felt good. Now, listen, I will say this. So it is difficult to be like, okay, every man that we have spraying pest control is going to drive this spotted truck. But once they knew why we were doing what we're doing, and we told them like, this is going to be so disruptive, they were fine. And they jumped right in. Chris drives one every day. And
yeah,
so
I mean, he went from, being in a DPS, fast vehicle, Texas tan, and to a big, huge ladybug with polka dot truck.
Yeah. So, I mean, they did have to kind of get behind it. But again, if you're the owner, this is your job to cast the vision for your team to get in there. So the next thing that happened is, now listen, we did have some cash to help us here, right? So when cash flow came into play, Trey, of course, our brother, was like, okay, here's my budget. So we had about $80,000 to launch marketing in the first year. So some of you are doing $2 million and don't spend $80,000 in marketing, but we knew we really were basically starting from scratch, and we knew what it took. So in that, we built a mascot. So some of y'all wait 15 years to do that. We had Johnny built. As soon as Emily was done designing him, creating Johnny the Ladybug, we had him made into a full parade quality mascot. We also immediately got a jingle from our Lemon Seed's favorite jingle guy, Jingle Jim. He helped us make a jingle. He created everything we do is, and he goes, bing, spot on. And we created that. It was very catchy. We had all of those things probably before Tiffany and Chris ran their first call because we knew the importance of the branding that we needed to do. We also turned around and bought radio and billboards in our town. And really, I mean, we kicked that thing off with a bang. And let me tell you, within 2 weeks of launching social media, billboards, radio, and just word of mouth, we were already getting calls from it. We were already seeing lots of positive reactions to it. And so it really kicked off. Now, Tiffany, bless her heart, she has to answer all the time on the performance of marketing. And so we also immediately pretty much started pivoting. So after 3 months of letting things ride, we started trying to figure out, we were already working on a new website. We already invested in SEO. But eventually, your money has to start coming in. So the other thing that I think Tiffany and Chris did really well is when we launched our cross promotion campaign, right? So the first thing Tiffany and Trey and Chris did was determine what value are we now going to bring to the Lone Star Pest and Termite database. So y'all, everyone listening probably knows the whole purpose of partnering with another company isn't just for the licensing for pest control, but it's for their database. And Mr. Greer had a great database. He was using Gorilla Desk, right, Tiffany?
Correct.
He was using Gorilla Desk, and it already had lots of good customer base there.
Yeah.
Our family is pretty respected in the community. I think we try to be really good people and give back. So a lot of people were like, oh, great, another good family, we think. So that helped. But we had to launch that campaign immediately of like telling everybody who we were and why we bought the company and start getting them on. Because the first thing we did was take a price increase on packages. We had to create all new, quarterly, I should say.
Yeah, and something that we added that was kind of new to this area was, and a lot of pest control companies are doing this, but not locally, and that's the subscription payments. And so that was kind of something we had. So we service quarterly, but they have a subscription payment plan. And so that was definitely something different than what Mr. Greer had been doing with his existing customers.
Right. So, when you go to service based or automatic payments, people don't know what to do with that, especially elderly people that are still wanting to write checks. So that was a big hurdle, I think. But really, what I think softened the blow was our brand. Everything. We changed all of even our editorial brand, meaning how we write things, what we put out there. We wanted to be fun and energetic and young, and that's exactly what we launched. And so I think, since y'all bought the company from Mr. Greer and you've had really your first full year in business, what are y'all expecting to do this year in revenue, percentage wise?
Yeah. So where we started, we are on track to end at 275% revenue growth from last year.
Yeah. So, which is freaking awesome for 1 year growth. And again, we're not talking millions yet. We're not $1 million pest control company. We are talking, six figures, but it took a lot to get over that hump of what he was doing. But what do you think mostly attributed to that large amount of a revenue growth?
Yeah, definitely the branding, and just the lemon seed side of things. One thing that they've always, I feel like is so helpful to me is my biweekly meetings with the lemon seed team, and my account manager is Jamie, and she always has such great, what I call like grassroots marketing ideas. There's not actually a lot of pest control companies. Well, really, I think it's fair, Crystal, to say there was like really none here with any type of marketing. And so when we showed up, last year, we definitely just automatically stood out. But and just like Crystal's strategy behind our newsletters, our direct mail pieces, and strategically placing our door hangers and our signage. We also do yard signs, and then we're also moving into new markets. And so Crystal and the Lemon Seed team has built out great strategies for us there as well.
Good, good. And one of the things that I think is important to note here is a lot of Tiffany. So, of course, with she and I being sisters, there's just natural trust there. So it's like, whatever you want me to do. But I really wish people understood the importance of not second guessing everything. And one day I called Tiffany and I was like, what do you think about this? And she goes, sister, I do not care. I do not, whatever you want to do, because she's running operations right now. And we're trying to build out all of these SOPs. Like y'all know, every contractor listening to this knows Tiffany's job is to run the dang business over there. So she's hiring, she's negotiating pricing on chemicals. We're trying to make sure that we're following all the guidelines of every entity that holds us accountable. Customer support. We've got a new CRM with field routes. So there's all these things. We're hiring people. And so Tiffany has to run the company. So that's good for me in a sense. She don't have time to question me, but more than anything, she trusts me. She trusts Jamie to keep things rolling forward. But then every once in a while, Jamie and I get an email from Tiffany with an idea or something she wants corrected or done. Or Chris is also very creative in his own, because he's doing the work. So he's also creative. Sometimes we're like, this is what I think would be a good offer. And so it really makes a good partnership working together on those things. But Tiffany, if you had to talk to someone that was really on the cusp, like, I know I need to probably brand my pest control company, but I just don't feel like I have the money or the time or whatever their instance is. What do you think is just some good solid pieces of advice?
Yeah. So first off, like, because so many pest control companies don't really have the budget to market, there's so many one-man shows. Once you like get into pest control, you realize how many are out there. And so I can't even I'm trying to think of the right word, encourage you enough to create, what is the word, Crystal? Like, so you're competing with lower prices. There's so many one-man shows out there that can do a quarterly for $85. Well, we can't do that. And so we've got to bring something else to the table. And so when we started, like our newsletters that go out, email newsletters that go out each month, like it's giving them little things that they've never heard of other pest controls doing. So for example, within our Spot Guard defense package, we do dewebbing, and we deweb all spider webs inside and outside the home, and just simple stuff like that. And that's what's allowing our customers, like, oh yeah, this company might have been, this one man show was only $80 yard, $200, but look at all these cool things they do. And so if I wasn't out there marketing it and making people hear hear us on the radio and go to our website, or be a part of our emails, then they wouldn't know. And
right. So
yes.
what in Tiffany's operational terms there, Spot On places a lot of importance of building value in their dollars. So we know we're the more expensive one, but we build so much value in there with things like dewebbing. So we're going to do what other pest control companies won't do, which are those little tiny things that come along and make the experience with Spot On worth the investment that you're doing. So yes, can they get it cheaper? And are there people that are just like, just come and spray, we don't care? Yes. And those aren't our customers for Spot On. We want customers that value, the experience and the trust that we bring and all the good products that we bring. And so definitely that's a big thing. So I love what Tiffany said here is basically, you can't be afraid to be, basically what I think Tiffany's saying here is you are going to elevate yourself above the other pest control companies that will allow you to charge more. So when you have a better brand and a better customer journey, if you're on Plan with Lemon Seed and we've got strategy going, it will elevate you to a point that you can charge more and justify it wholeheartedly and with your best foot forward. So
and just being confident, like make the decision and just do it. Like, and be a risk taker. Because at the very beginning, when I started running the pest control company, it was very out of my comfort zone. I'm a doer, not usually the creator. So I would, working with Crystal, I would just do what she said. She was the creator. So then as I started running the pest control company, I didn't have someone. I was asking for everybody's opinions, and I quickly learned I couldn't do that because it was just giving me doubt. And so I would come up with an idea or a strategy with the help of Lemon Seed, and I just had to say, you know what, I've got to try it. And there were things that we've tried that Trey and I thought would really, really work. That didn't, and we had to be okay with it and pivot, like Crystal said. And so I think something that's super important when you work with Lemon Seed is that you understand that not everything works. It's just part of the game. It's part of what makes it exciting too.
Yeah.
And so I just encourage you to take the risk and trust the process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that's really important piece of this is definitely learning to trust the process, learning that when you follow your gut and you make decisions, like I just want to shake everybody sometimes and be like, buddy, this is yours. You make decisions. Most of the time we can fix anything that goes on, most of the time there might be something that gets you there. And you're like, I will never do that again. But you don't live until you learn a little bit about, mistakes. When Tiffany and I look up and be like, okay, we shouldn't have done that. But you don't know until you start and you give it your whole effort and all of your authority. So, well, Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us today. If you would like to see more about Spot On, what we look like, what we do, spotonpestcontrol.com. We're also, Tiffany, we have TikTok and Facebook and Instagram for Spot On. And of course, you can always reach out to Tiffany is Tiffany at spotonpestcontrol.com. If you have any emails or any questions for her, you can email her, and it's all down in our show notes. So thank you for listening to another episode of From the Yellow Chair. I'm Crystal with Lemon Seed Marketing. We definitely can help you get a new brand and a marketing strategy to launch that brand and see great growth immediately from just some good implementation there. So if you love this episode and love what we do, we'd love to have a review from you on Google or wherever you're listening to your podcast today. We hope everyone has a great rest of their week, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.